Welcome back to Freedom, Facts, and Firearms. My name is Novak, and today we'll be looking at what the colonial American gun laws were. Thanks to the U.S. Supreme Court's recent Bruin ruling in 2022, all gun laws must be consistent with the tradition and history of the U.S. from 1791 and prior. We've spent a lot of time looking at what the English gun laws were that influenced our founders' stances and that consistently get argued in American courts to push gun control. Now let's see what the actual American gun laws were. The very first guarantee to arms came from King James I on April 10th, 1606. It was given in the form of a charter to the Virginia Company to create two colonies. The colony of Virginia would be established in 1607. The charter read in part, "The king, binding his heirs and successors, gave full power and authority to the leaders of the Virginia Company and so many of our subjects as shall willingly accompany them, for all of them to bring sufficient shipping and furniture of armor, weapons, ordnance, powder, victual, and other things necessary for the said plantations for their use and defense there, provided always that none of the said persons be such as shall hereafter be specially restrained by us, our heirs, or successors." The second Virginia charter was in 1609. This charter stated the colonies had the right, from time to time, and at all times forever hereafter, for their several defenses, to encounter, expulse, repel, and resist, as well by seas as by land, by all ways and means whatsoever, any persons who should attempt to inhabit the colonies without permission, or anyone who attempted the hurt, detriment, or annoyance of the said several colonies or plantations. A third charter was established in 1620, known as the New England Charter. This charter stated that "it shall be lawful for our loving subjects, or any other strangers who become our loving subjects, to at all and every time and times hereafter, out of our realms or dominions whatsoever, to take, load, carry, and transport, in shipping, armor, weapons, ordnance, munition, powder, shot, victuals, and all manner of clothing, implements, furniture, beasts, cattle, horses, mares, and all other things necessary for the said plantation, and for their use and defense, and for trade with the people there." Further, this charter reiterated collective defense rights. For their several defense and safety, encounter, expulse, repel, and resist by force of arms, as well as by sea as by land, in all ways and means whatsoever, all persons who attempted to inhabit New England without the government's permission. It also affirmed the right to resist any person who attempted the destruction, invasion, detriment, or annoyance of said colony and plantation. So as you can see, from the very beginning, the colonies were treated very different from the English. The king himself authorized the colonies to have rights and freedoms that were not available to the people in England. Perpetual guarantees of arms and unrestricted access to arms for defense and trade were granted to the colonists, and those guarantees covered body armor, firearms, ordnance and explosives, gunpowder, ammunition, animals, and other accessories. During the colonial period, the amount of gun control laws that existed on actual items was zero. There were none. There were only laws restricting who could own arms, and most people were required by law to own and carry guns in the colonies. Let's take a look at the specific laws of each colony. Massachusetts Bay Colony. On March 22, 1631, Massachusetts Bay adopted a law mandating that all adult males be armed. In 1645, the General Court ordered that all inhabitants must have arms in their houses fit for service, with powder, bullets, match, as other soldiers. This same order established trained bands, which trained more frequently than the general militia. so they were basically the special forces of the militia. The members of these bands were required to have either full musket bore or bastard musket at the least, and that none should be under 3 foot 9 inches. The 1645 law also set the requirements for when training with firearms must begin. It read, "All youth within this jurisdiction from 10 years old to the age of 16 years shall be instructed by some one of the officers of the band or some other experienced soldier, upon the usual training days, in the exercise of arms, as small guns, half-pikes, bows, and arrows." So children from the age of 10 and up were required to be trained in the use of arms. How drastically things have changed from then to now. The law did, however, provide an exemption if the child's parents were against them being trained in arms. Plymouth Colony. In 1632, Plymouth mandated, "Every freeman or other inhabitant must provide for himself and each under him able to bear arms, a musket and other serviceable piece, with bandoleros and other appurtenances, plus 2 pounds of powder and 10 pounds of bullets." Male indentured servants who had completed their service, and other male singles, could not set up their own households unless they possessed the required arms and ammunition. If they could not obtain them, they would have to work for somebody who would buy the arms and ammo for them. Also, during emergencies, any person that lacked the required arms could be fined. Maryland. In 1639, Maryland required that every housekeeper or housekeepers within this province shall have ready continually upon all occasions within his, her, or their house for him or themselves, and for every person within his, her, or their house able to bear arms, one serviceable fixed gun or bastard musket bore. Also required was 1 pound of gunpowder, 4 pounds of pistol or musket shot, match for matchlocks, or flint for firelocks. The phrasing in this law was unique as well. Unlike other colonies, Maryland didn't single out men. They stated his, her, or their in their statute, showing that all people were to be armed and held that responsibility. Maryland also wanted to ensure people could take care of themselves. So in 1641, a new statute was passed, and it stated that anyone immigrating to Maryland and wishing to acquire title to Maryland must bring arms and ammunition as are intended and required by the conditions above said, to be provided and carried into said province of Maryland, for every man between the ages of 16 and 50 years, which shall be transported to there. The minimum set was 1 musket or bastard musket with a snap-hands lock, 10 pounds of gunpowder, 40 pounds of lead, bullets, pistol, and goose shot. Maryland increased the minimum arms required in 1658. Every householder provide himself speedily with arms and ammunition according to a former Act of Assembly, 2 pounds of powder and 5 of shot, and 1 good gun well fixed for every man able to bear arms in his house. Connecticut. Connecticut was founded in 1636, and its government ordered that every soldier should have in his own house in a readiness 2 pounds of gunpowder and 20 lead bullets. In 1637, a new law was passed stating that all persons shall bear arms that are above the age 16 years. Every military man had to have continually in his house half a pound of powder and 2 pounds of bullets. Towns were also required to have specified reserves of gunpowder and lead bullets in the event of drawn-out battles and that one's private stock may be depleted. Connecticut further expanded arms mandates in 1650 and ordered that all persons that are above the age of 16 years, except magistrates and church officers, shall bear arms, and every male person within this jurisdiction above said age shall have in continual readiness a good musket or other gun fit for service and allowed by the clerk of the band. New Haven. In the colony of New Haven, which became part of Connecticut in 1662, all males aged 16 to 60 were required to have a good serviceable gun to be kept in a constant fitness in all respects for service. Further, a good sword, bandoliers, a powder horn, worm, scorer, priming wire, shot bag, charger, and whatsoever else is necessary for such service was required. The ammunition minimum was also at least a pound of good powder and 4 pounds of pistol bullets, or 24 long gun bullets, and matches for a matchlock or flints for a flintlock. New Hampshire. New Hampshire passed its first Militia Act in 1687. It stated that no person whatsoever above 16 years of age remained unenlisted. So basically, everyone 16 and older had to be in the militia. The law also required the possession of a well-fixed musket with at least a barrel of 3 feet, a large caliber, bandoliers, a cartridge box, bullets, and powder. It was optional for some men to have a good pike and sword instead of a musket. Take note that the laws state persons and not males. The original law included everyone, but was changed in 1692 to be only males. Rhode Island. Rhode Island required that every inhabitant of the island above 16 or under 60 years of age shall always be provided with a musket, 1 pound of powder, 20 bullets, and 2 fathom of match, with sword, rest, bandoliers, all completely furnished. New York. In 1671 and 1676, the royal governor of New York issued militia laws requiring that towns and individuals each have their own arms supply. All males, 16 to 60, had to have a firearm and the appropriate accessories and ammunition. Landowners had to obtain their own equipment, but those listed as sons or servants were to be equipped by their parents and masters. They were required to have a good serviceable gun, plus a good sword, and to keep them in constant fitness for service. In 1684, a statute was passed requiring those exempt from militia service to keep and maintain the same arms. New Jersey. In order to encourage immigration, New Jersey offered land to any free man or woman that would come armed with a good musket, plus 10 pounds of gunpowder, 20 pounds of bullets, match, bandoleros, and 6 months of food. In 1702, New Jersey mandated that all men 16 to 50 had to be in the militia, and each one shall be sufficiently armed with one good sufficient musket or fuse well fixed, a sword or bayonet, a cartouche box or powder horn, a pound of powder, and 12 sizable bullets. In 1781, the militia requirements were updated. It required a good musket plus bayonet and allowed a rifle plus a tomahawk as alternatives. Everyone had to have a cartridge box, 23 rounds, 6 flints, knapsack, canteen, worm, and priming wire. Virginia. Virginia held many mandated arms laws as well. Unfortunately, many of the early records were lost. However, one that survived read, all persons except Negroes to be provided with arms and ammunition, or be fined at pleasure of the governor and council. In 1656, ownership was again required. Every man able to bear arms had to have a fixed gun, 2 pounds of powder, and 8 pounds of shot. Anyone in violation of this would be fined 50 pounds of tobacco. In 1684, a revision was made requiring all free Virginians to provide and furnish themselves with a sword, musket, and other furniture fit for a soldier. In 1762, a requirement for those exempt from militia service was made so that they also must possess militia type arms. North Carolina. To encourage settlement in North Carolina, land grants and offerings were made to immigrants. However, they required that every man have a good musket full bore, 10 pounds powder, and 20 pounds of bullets. A free woman was allowed to have an armed servant in place of being armed herself. North Carolina's 1715 militia law required all freemen between 16 to 60 to be in the militia and have a good gun, well-fixed sword, and at least 6 charges of powder and ball. In 1746, a new statute required militia members to be well provided with a gun, fit for service, and at least 12 charges of powder and ball, or swan shot, and 6 spare flints. This statute also brought indentured servants into the militia. The North Carolina militia also included free blacks, who could serve with no discrimination against them. Delaware. In 1671, a law required every person that can bear arms from 16 to 60 years of age to have powder and bullet fit for service and their mutual defense. Delaware updated its arms laws in 1741, stating, "Every freeholder and taxable person shall have one well-fixed musket or firelock, one cartouche box, with 12 charges of gunpowder and ball therein, and 3 good flints, and shall be obliged to keep such arms and ammunition by him during the continuance of this act." Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was unique in that it was home to the Quakers, who were pacifists, so there were no arms mandates in Pennsylvania. However, once Pennsylvania became a state in 1776, their constitution created a statewide militia. So as you can see, America was a very different place from England and very different from what politicians today claim it to have been. Almost every colony required the ownership of guns from man, woman, child, and servant. There were 0 laws restricting any free person from arms possession of any type. America was built on arms, and from its beginning, nearly everyone was armed in one way or another. Thanks for watching Freedom Facts and Firearms. I hope you learned something, and be sure to join us next time as we get into the colonial laws on routine carry.